In previous videos, we've covered row and measure formatting. Now, we'll explore another formatting option in Velocity, column formatting. As the name implies, this type of formatting is based on the data columns. Let us use the transactions cuboid to demonstrate the column format. We had created a row format for this cuboid and assigned it. Let's quickly verify that. Looking at the available formats, we see only a row format available. Clicking on the View/Edit Assign Format takes us to the row format setting. Notice the name of the format range in the name box of the workbook. Let's navigate to our transactions sheet. To generate a column format, place your cursor anywhere in the cuboid and then click on Format Data from the Boardwalk Velocity menu, navigate to Generate Format, and then click on Column. Velocity then navigates to the column format configuration sheet, creates a placeholder for the format, generates a range name for the format too. After reading the informational message, click on OK. Let's now understand the information being presented. Row 3 has the headers for the column formatting range, and the columns of this column format range are element, format, protection, measure, and BW columns. Values in the element column refer to the elements of our data table. The value table indicates the entire data table. Any setting against this applies to the entire table. The value header indicates the header of our data cuboid, in our case is the transaction cuboid. The value data refers to the data rows of our transactions cuboid. The format column contains the formatting being applied to each of the elements. The protection column indicates the protection being applied to the element, i.e., if the element is protected or not. The measure column indicates which of the columns of transactions cuboid is to be considered as measure column. BW columns refers to the columns of the transactions cuboid. In the transaction cuboid, there are no measures, so we will leave it blank. Let's assign the column format to the transaction cuboid so that we can test the effects of our changes to the column format of the cuboid. Navigate to the transactions cuboid, then click on Format Data, followed by Assign Format, and then clicking on Column Format Transactions. Click OK on the informational pop-up. Let's test the format by clicking on Format Data followed by Test Format. In our format, we had indicated that the table background is yellow, so our entire table was colored yellow. We also had mentioned that the header row will be blue in color with white font, which we see here. Let's unhide the BWID column and see the formatting there. We see the background color for the cells is dark green and the font color is black. Also, if one tries to edit the values, we find that the cell is protected. Let's navigate back to our column format and relook at these settings. Here we see the table element has a format of yellow background and black font color, and the protection is right, implying that the cells are open for input. For the element header, the format is defined as blue background with bold white font. The protection is set to be read, implying no changes are allowed. You will notice that there are two rows for the element data. The first data row is for the entire table, excepting the header, and the format is set to yellow background and black font color, and the protection is not defined, so it inherits this property from the row for the table. The second data row is specifically for the column BWID, with dark green background and black font, and is protected from being changed. We can change the cell coloring to another color, say a shade of gray. Let's navigate to our transactions cuboid and test the change we made. We see the formatting of the BWID column has changed per our settings. Let's make some more changes. We would like to see the TXN date in date format and add comma separators to our TXN amount column. Navigating to our column format, we can add these changes. Let's insert a blank row below the first data row. Enter data in the element column and a date in the format column and format that date to 3-letter month followed by date and a 4-digit year. And let's left justify the date. Insert another row below the current row. Type data in the element column and enter a number in the format column. Next, set the format for the cell to currency, comma separated and with 2 decimal places. And let's write justify the format for the cell. Now that we have the formats ready, let's assign them to the desired columns. The date format is to be assigned to TXN date, which is the first column. Notice how we have indicated column 1. The currency format is to be assigned to the TXN amount column, which is the 5th column. You can either use the column name or column number under the BW columns. We need to indicate a range of columns in the BW columns, which is the column number separated by 2 dashes. In our example for column 1, we used 1-1 to indicate the range. Let's navigate to our transactions cuboid and test our format. Let's increase the size of the TXN date to see the formatting. Notice the format of the TXN amount. A format can be set for multiple columns too. For example, for columns type and region, we can have them centered. The column numbers for these are 4 and 13 respectively. Additionally, from the indicator column to the region column, we can change the color to be white background. The column number for indicator is 3 and for region is 13. So, let's navigate to our column format sheet and make the necessary modifications. Let's insert a row above the last data row and make the required entries. Enter data in the element column. In the format column, enter centered just to remember the format we are using. Enter 4-4, 13-13 in the BW columns column. Notice the 2 entries being separated by a comma. Next, we need to ensure the entry in the format column is centered and is of general format. For this, we will use Excel's features from the Home tab. Now, let's change the background color of the columns too. Let's insert a row below the row number 6. Enter the word data under the column element and the word text under the column format. Now change the background color to white. Leave the protection value blank, as it will inherit the property from the row above it, which in turn inherited the property from the table element. Next, in the column BW columns, enter 3-13, which indicates the range of columns this format is to be applied on. Now we need to color the format for the currency column and centered columns to be white too, since the yellow color will override the white background of those columns. Let's switch back to our Transactions tab and test our format out. Notice how our changes have been applied. This concludes our session on column formatting. In the next session, we will be covering template versioning.